Hey guys, hope you are doing well. It's been quite a while since we have done one of these YouTube lives, and I was thinking maybe it had been, a month or so ago, but when I look back, it seems like it's been more like 4 months. So I will try not to go as long between these, and we'll try to get on a regular schedule. Probably do one on Wednesday, and then maybe on Saturdays when we can. So the point of this is to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions, whether that's about debt defense. Now, specifically, I practice in Alabama, but I can give you some general ideas, or about credit reports and fixing errors on your credit reports, or suing under the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or dealing with debt collectors under the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So, any of those topics or other consumer issues, I'll do my best to answer those. And so feel free to type those into the chat. If everything is working, we should be able to pop those up on the screen. And let's see, I see one question coming in. So I'll go ahead and answer that. And if we have sort of a lull in the questions, I'll talk to you about the Clarity credit report. So, a credit report that even lawyers that do this type of work, most of lawyers I ask, if I see them at a conference or something, I say, "Hey, do you have your clients pull your Clarity credit report?" And they go, "Clara who?" Okay, so it's not a very common credit report that we think about, but it has a lot of errors. So we'll either cover that today or we'll do that in a different video. But let's see. Isaiah Anderson said, "How would you handle charge-off?" So great question. So let's take this in a couple of stages. So one, what is a charge-off? And then how do those appear on your credit report? And then how do you dispute those? So a charge-off is really an accounting function. That's all it is. Sometimes people make it, that it's something more than that, or they confuse it with a 1099 on debt cancellation. Those are not the same thing. Now, sometimes they go together, but one is not the same as the other. So a charge off is simply where you have, as a company, you have accounts receivable. So that's an asset. That's, let's say I own a company and Isaiah owes me $1,000. Well, that's an account receivable. That's an asset for me. But once it goes past a certain period of time, and typically that's 6 months of non payment, then under generally accepted accounting principles, I cannot continue to have that on my books as an account receivable. So I have to charge it off. Okay. And we won't get into the details of how that works from an accounting standpoint, but that's all I mean. It's a charge off. The debt is still owed. Okay. That doesn't make the debt go away. Again, a lot of misinformation out there about as soon as something's charged off, you no longer owe it. That is completely false. I mean, there are Midland files usually 700 to 1,000 lawsuits a month just in Alabama on charged off debt. Okay. Portfolio recovery files, a couple hundred, LVMV files, 1,000 or more. I mean, there are people all the time that judges are entering judgment against them on charged off debt. The debt is still valid. Okay. It's an accounting function. Now, sometimes it goes beyond that where the creditor or a debt buyer says, "Hey, I am going to cancel this debt and issue a 1099." Now that gets into a different question. But at its core, a charge off is just simply saying it's gone usually 6 months without any payment. All right. So how does that appear on your credit report? Well, there's a status field that will say charge off. And then usually on your credit report, if you look down, there's a payment history. And for each month, it will have either written out charge off or more commonly CO for charge off. And every month that's the status, it will say charge off. So if I have a debt charged off in January, then January 24 will say charge off, February will say charge off, March, April, until either it's paid or that gets changed. Okay. So what do you do about it? Well, it's really the same as any other negative item. So here's kind of the framework we use, and we deal with, hundreds and hundreds of credit reports a month at my law firm. We look at a negative item, whether it's a charge off, whether it's a late, a repo, a foreclosure, whatever it is, collection account, any negative item, and we say, are there errors? That could be it's inaccurate, it's contradictory, It has incomplete information. And then we say, okay, if there are errors and we are allowed to dispute, then the question becomes, second question, should we dispute? Now, if it's a charge off, the answer is almost always yes. Okay. Now, if it's a 30-day late 4 years ago, and maybe that is not accurate, but it's been positive ever since, we may not want to take a chance on that being deleted off of a credit report. But a charge off, if you dispute properly, and we have all sorts of videos on that, they can fix it. Hey, can't complain if they fix it. They can delete it. Great. We want that charge off of our credit report. Or if they don't fix it, don't delete it. Option number 3 is they get sued. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. That first step is to say, are there inaccuracies, are there contradictions, are there incomplete information or data out there on that account? So give you an example of a contradiction. You may look and see that like on Equifax under the comments. And I'm talking about when you pull your full report from annualcreditreport.com. Not talking about if you're using, some 3-in-1 service, but like you literally get Equifax from the Equifax website via annualcreditreport.com. Same thing with Experian, TransUnion. This would apply also to Innovis, to Clarity. You go to their websites to get it. But Equifax may say, hey, June of 2020, it was 120 days late. And you go down in your payment history, June of 2020, it says 30 days late. Which one is it? Is it 120? Is it 30? Is it none of the above? Right? It can't be both. You can't be 30 days late and 120 days late at the same time. All right. So you're looking for contradictions. Maybe there's a date of last payment and there's no payment amount, or it says 0. Well, how can you have a 0 payment? I mean, does that work with the power company? You write them a check, in my world, you say Alabama Power, and I'm paying you $0. And then they cut your lights off and you call them and you go, I paid you. And they go, yeah, you sent a check for 0. That ain't a check. That ain't a payment. Okay. So is it stuff like that? Is it just literally missing data? Is it inaccurate data? It may say data first delinquency is, December of 21. And for 6 months before December and 6 months after December, you're current. You're like, well, obviously that's wrong. Okay, it's just flat out inaccurate. So that's what we're looking for. Something that's inaccurate, contradictory, incomplete. And then we dispute that. The method that I use is we give them all the information, whether that's typing all the words out on a letter, whether that's literally dropping in the page of the credit report and circling everything and drawing arrows and putting labels on it, so that it's very, very obvious what's wrong. And then you see, do they fix it? Do they delete it? Or do they want to be sued? So hopefully that's helpful to you. Isaiah, good question. Let's see, your green thumb. Hey, nice to see you as well. And let's see, the Tommy Bernhard podcast. Do you have any connections in Delaware? Can I get an attorney to return my calls? So let's do this. Short answer is no, but let me see where my, okay. They moved the window around on me here. So let me do this. So we'll come back to Clarity if we have time, but let's go consumer advocates. So find an attorney here. So I'm going to drop this into the chat, and hopefully wherever you're watching this, Tommy, you can see this. And so what we would do is pull up Delaware. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see here. So we would look for Delaware, and I don't know exactly what practice area. Let's just say it's credit reporting, and then search. And okay, so it looks like one person came up in Wilmington, and then you can click on this person's name and get more information. If it's instead is debt collection, not credit reporting. Looks like a couple other people have come up. So hopefully that can help you find them. Certainly, there are people that are not in this organization that do consumer law, but this is a good place to start. And what I would do, Tommy, is if they have like a web forum, give them your situation and give them sort of a summary at the beginning. Hey, this is identity theft with my credit reports, and I've disputed 3 times and I can't get this fixed. Can you help me? And then like give the details. Some people write, 8 paragraphs, and I'm like, by the 4th paragraph, I still don't know what the question is. Okay. And so kind of put a headline, if you will, sort of a headline paragraph. This is what I'm dealing with. I've got a debt collector calling my ex-mother-in-law, on an old Citibank credit card. Can you help me? And then provide the details. And hopefully that will get you some help. If you still can't find anybody, reach out to me through my website, alabamaconsumer.com, and I'll reach out to some other contacts and see if I don't know anybody there, but maybe a buddy of mine in Georgia or California knows somebody in Delaware. So good question, and hope that will help you there. Let's see. Let me stop sharing here. I can find the dispute bankruptcy spreadsheet. Yeah, so reach out to me through alabamaconsumer.com, and I'll send that to you. I think that is from a series we did a couple years ago. We don't necessarily use that anymore, but I'll send it to you just in case it's helpful. There's some other ways and other video series we have that might be more helpful, but again, that may be something that you want to do, but just reach out to me on that. All right, let's see. Your green thumb. What would you suggest if CRAs are responding in Spanish? And when they say disputes coming from credit repair, I've even gotten that response from the CFPB. So I guess the first question would be, if they're responding in Spanish, is our dispute letter in Spanish? If it is, then it would make sense for them to respond. But if our dispute letter is in English and they're responding in Spanish, that would be very perplexing. Okay. And unless there's somehow we told them in the past, I want you to respond in Spanish. So I would either write back to them or call them. Usually there's a phone number, what they send you, and say, hey, why are you sending this in Spanish? I need English. Okay. And, in your presumably your dispute letters in English, and you can put a sentence like, I'm writing to you in English. I need you to respond to me in English. Okay. Now, in terms of the second question, when they say disputes coming from credit repair company. So here's the deal with credit repair companies and the FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act. A furnisher, if you send a dispute directly to the furnisher, so that's a person that provides or furnishes information to the credit bureau, and they think it's from a credit repair company, they can reject that if they make that correct determination. But understand this, a direct dispute to a furnisher, you cannot sue on that. Okay, at least not under the FCRA. So, that's not particularly helpful to do that. So you send it to the credit bureaus. Now, the credit bureaus cannot reject your letter simply because they think it comes from credit repair. Now, they particularly Experian, and I'm starting to see Equifax. I know some people have a lot of trouble with TransUnion. We don't usually have trouble with TransUnion, but definitely Experian, and a growing problem with Equifax, where they say, we don't think this came from you, so therefore we're rejecting it, and you should just go on our website and you can dispute this. You don't need to pay anybody. I understand this. My clients don't pay me any money, but like in a credit repair situation, they would pay money typically to the credit repair company. That is not a valid reason just because it's from a credit repair organization. It's really a bogus reason to say, we don't think this came directly from you. What they're basing that off of is what has a different zip code. So you live over here and your letter was mailed here, because in the minds of these geniuses that we call credit bureaus or credit reporting agencies, they think if you live in this zip code, you can never travel outside that zip code. You can never work in another zip code and never mail a letter in another zip code. You can never live over here, but the post office that's closest to you is here, and so you go there. They go, oh, no, must not be you. Must be a fraudulent company sending this to you. even though the letter has your driver's license, your proof of address, it says respond to me at my home address, okay, which matches exactly what's in their file. And that also ignores, we had this little thing in 2020 called COVID, where people really started to understand, hey, maybe I don't want to go to the post office. And so I'm going to use like LetterStream or CertifiedMailLabels.com or any number of companies where you just upload a PDF of your dispute letter, give them the address, and they mail it for you. It's fabulous, okay? But the credit bureaus think, oh, nobody could ever use that. So look, the truth of the matter is they're not thinking that this didn't really come from you. What they're thinking is if we get 10,000 disputes a day and we send out 5,000 of these bogus letters, you know how many people actually take action? Maybe 500. So guess what? We just got rid of 4,500 disputes that we don't have to pay somebody overseas like 50 cents to do that dispute. Look at all the money we've saved. And you may go, well, that doesn't seem very realistic. That's exactly what they do. Okay. They hate processing disputes. Processing disputes for a credit bureau costs them money, and it opens them up to liability when they mess it up. Because they don't want to spend any money doing it, they do such a lousy job, they get sued. So how about they can just push all those disputes away? So that's what they do. Now, if your letter came from a credit repair company, then what I would do is call the bureau and say, hey, I had somebody send that for me. It's my letter. I want you to process my dispute. And they go, oh, no, we're not going to do it. Say, that's all right. I'll read you my letter. I'll read the whole thing to you, and you can do the dispute over the phone, right? Because we can do a phone dispute. So get your fingers get them loosened up, get ready to type, because I've got a 14-page letter that I'm going to read to you. Shall we begin? Suddenly, the person on the other, actually, we can use that letter now that I think about it. I thought so. I'm still doing a phone dispute. I'm still telling you everything in my letter. I dispute if I requested my complete file, if I requested a consumer statement be added, if I requested method of verification, everything in my letter, I'm making that each of those requests again by phone. Okay, so now you got one written dispute, one phone dispute, got two disputes now. So that's one way to fight back against this. There's also the option, and sometimes we do that, we just sue them for doing that and say, you refuse to do an investigation. You have the driver's license, proof of address, like we had, 47 pages of your credit report enclosed in the letter, all marked up. You know exactly that this is from my client. And we just sue them for that. Okay. So I think the last question was, even got that response from CFPB. Yeah, I'll say this. So it's okay to make a complaint to the CFPB. It's sort of an open question among some judges. Is that sufficient to trigger FCRA liability? Okay. You've got a dispute to the credit bureau, and then they mess it up so you can sue the credit bureaus. And you've got a dispute to the credit bureau so that when they notify the furnisher, now if the furnisher messes up the investigation, you can sue. What if you go through the CFPB and they notify the credit bureau? Maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not. Kind of depends on your judge. The safe thing is you do something through the CFPB. That's great. Also do it through the bureau. So certified mail is my preference. If you do it online, please record your screen. Okay. People go, how do I do that? We'll get Loom, Loom, get Zoom. We all have Zoom. Start a Zoom just with yourself. Share your screen as you go to Equifax.com, Experian.com, TransUnion. So that way, when you upload a document and then they mess it up and you sue them and they go, you never upload that document. You're like, here's the video where it says upload complete. Okay. So I'll just tell you this, the CFPB has sort of chastised, has fussed at. We'll see if they do more than that, but they've done that to the credit bureaus because it's an extraordinarily high percentage of CFPB complaints that credit bureaus go, that was credit repair. We're going to ignore that. And remember, the law is not that a credit bureau can ignore a dispute from a credit repair organization. They can only ignore the dispute if they feel that it's frivolous. And they've also created this sort of bogus arguments based on one case where I think a judge misinterpreted the law. but where a judge said, well, it has to come directly from the consumer to the bureau. And then it's sort of like the judge is thinking, well, what if you get your attorney to mail it? Or what if you ask a friend to mail it? Bottom line is, if it's a letter that you wrote or somebody wrote for you and you read it, you approved it, you blessed it, and you said, mail this out, I think the credit bureaus are on very, very shaky ground to just say, you know what, we see all these errors you point out, but we're just going to ignore them because that's a different zip code. So anyway, that's my little rant for the day. All right. Let's see here. Sosa, disputed historical data is different on all three bureaus for multiple months. Nothing changed. I reach out to an attorney. They said it's not a case they can win. I feel stuck. Let me see. Okay. So I'd say a couple things. When you say disputing historical data, make sure you're not just basing that off of like a smart IQ or identity IQ, smart credit, any number of those companies, because if the data is not directly from the bureaus, then they can argue that it's not accurate data. It's not what they actually reported. Okay. And so sometimes for ease of use, the identity IQs, the smart credits, they lay everything out in a very easy to read format, so you can sort of see this column and this column and this column, but it may not be the correct data. Okay. And that's the argument that the credit bureaus make. So always use from annualcreditreport.com. Okay. And I know some lawyers disagree with that. And that's fine. I mean, I've been doing this for long before annualcreditreport.com came about. And I'm perfectly content with it. Actually, when people bring us other credit reports, I go, yeah, that's cute. Now let's go get your real reports. Okay. So if you've done that and you've pointed out all the errors, and it hasn't been fixed, and the lawyer tells you they can't help you, you may want to talk to another lawyer. Okay. You may want to ask specifically why. Why is this not enough? Now, maybe it's one little piece of information from 5 years ago, and they say our judges just won't accept that. Well, what if it's 10 pieces of incorrect data? What if it's 50 pieces of incorrect data? What if it's 100 pieces of incorrect data? Okay. So have you gone through your reports and found everything that's missing, everything that's inaccurate, everything that's contradictory, and loaded that into your letter? Okay. And then what does the lawyer say? They say, that's still not enough. Well, why? Why isn't it enough? Now, they may say, well, in my jurisdiction, we would not be able to prove standing. Standing is your ability to get into federal court. Yeah, I've been preaching something for many, many, many years, and sort of a lot of fellow consumer lawyers said I was crazy, and now they're starting to come around to it. You file stuff in state court. They remove it or transfer it to federal court. Now they have to prove that you have standing, okay? And I won't get into all the details about this, but it's a highly controversial area in the law, particularly with consumer law. And if they're the ones that brought the case in federal court, so I filed in state court, they removed federal court, they bear the obligation of proving to that federal judge this is allowed in federal court. And if they're wrong, it just goes back to state court. Okay. And these companies do not like being in state court. Okay. Whole variety of reasons. But I would just talk to a couple of lawyers, and whoever you talk to, if they say we can't bring that suit, just ask them why. Maybe they say, well, you don't have a credit turned down. Okay. Go apply for something that you're interested in. Get turned down. Is that enough? So in other words, I would keep sort of pressing on it. Make sure you've identified all the errors. You've very clearly disputed it, and then find out what exactly is the lawyer saying, here's the problem why we can't sue. All right, so let's look here. Tommy says, send your disputes notarized, signed, copy of license, utility bill, claim signed, you contact. Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, it's fantastic advice. I'll say this: there's nothing wrong with form letters. The CFPB, is really coming down on the credit bureaus about this. Going, just because it's a form letter doesn't mean you can ignore it. For example, the FTC, the CFPB, guess what they have on their website? Form letters. Okay, so if a form letter is enough to be able to disregard it, then you would go to the agencies charged with regulating the bureaus, and then they would be rejected. That makes no sense. Plus, you know what the credit bureaus send on all these stall letters? It's a form letter. Okay. So, yes, it's best if you can write it yourself. But the main thing is identify all the errors. And like Tommy said here, copy your license, utility bill. If you look at Experian, probably 10 to 20% have a social security number variation. Enclose your social security card. You may even start doing that on all of them. Okay. Just so that imagine you're standing in front of a judge and they go, Judge, we didn't really think this was from Tommy. And the judge is looking at it going, okay, let's see. It's got Tommy's name, his address, his license, his utility bill, his social security. So what exactly did you reject this for, Mr. Equifax or Miss TransUnion? Well, we thought maybe the zip code was a little different where it was mailed from, or it had some language that we don't think consumers really know that. So we assumed that it was like an identity thief had broken into his house and wrote this dispute letter and asked that we mail the results to his house. It's just absurd. Okay, so we can get mad about it, or we can say, you know what, these places are crooked. They're bad, and they're going to break the law. And when they break the law, we sue them. All right, let's see. Isaiah, watch your previous videos. Help me remove my repo and charge off. I have to remove more charge off, one more repo. Okay, well, great. Glad that was of some help. This is that website, consumeradvocates.org. That's what I was showing on the screen there just a minute ago. All right, Tommy, Sosa, same problem. And let me just back up. So the issue with Sosa was the historical data, and lawyer says it can't help. So Tommy says, only attorney you've been able to get to return my call wants me to provide proof of missing payment history and contradictory statements. So I'll say this. I don't have a credit report handy that I can pop up on the screen, that's redacted. But what we do and what we sue on, all the time is we're finding, like, let's take a simple example. Okay. So I open a Capital One card in, let's say 2015, January of 2015. And the payment history starts off in January of 2020. Well, we go to the payment history and we would, put a box or a circle around all those missing months from January 15 all the way through. Now, usually wouldn't have 15 on the screen, but, on the report. But let's say it's going to have, 2017 or 2018. We grab all that and go up to the point where they do start reporting the data. And then we draw an arrow to the open date, circle that and say, you got a report from when the account was open. Okay. And so you've identified now the missing information, the contradictory information. Again, like the example I gave, I think was June 2020. They say you're 120 days late. So you circle that. You draw an arrow down to the payment history, June 2020, where it says you were current or 30 days late. You circle that and you write across it, but contradictory. Like which one is true? Okay. So we want this to be so that when a judge is looking at it, they're like, wow, well, that's obviously contradictory. Obviously it's missing. And okay, Mr. Experienced lawyer, what's your explanation? Did y'all do an investigation? Well, Judge, it's very complicated. And, well, no, it's actually pretty simple here. Like they literally drew a picture for you, and I usually say this, at least try to say it every time I remember to. Warren Maxwell, who's in Pennsylvania, he showed me a credit report that was marked up that way. And I was like, that's brilliant. And so that's what we do now. I would highly recommend that. Okay. You can still type a letter or just drop those images in. Like my Capital One account has all sorts of errors and contradictions and missing information. Make it 100% complete and accurate, or delete it. See below. And you got it dropped into your Word document, stuff circled and arrows. And that's what I recommend doing, because I think it makes it so easy for a judge, so easy for a juror to look at that and be like, well, yeah, that's pretty obvious. And then, the bureau lawyers up there like, well, it's a very complicated subject and we couldn't tell that there was anything missing. Well, you got open date, 15, and you don't start reporting data till 2020. Looks like pretty obvious stuff missing there. So that's my recommendation to help with that. contradictory statements. Again, so I should have said this. There's kind of two ways to do this. You look inside a credit report. Okay. So imagine that right here is the credit report and you're finding contradictions in here. You can also have the credit report, but you look outside. Here's a court order over here. Here is a monthly statement that contradicts what's inside the report. Here's an identity theft affidavit. Here's a police report. Here's a copy of, all my personal information because you have me mixed up with this other person. And so whatever it is that can prove what you're saying, you definitely want to include that. You want to include that, okay? So if it's, hey, on page 7 of my credit report, you say this, but page 8, you say that, well, include those pages. If it's, I've got a police report, I've got a FTC fraud report, include that. You want to give everything possible to the credit bureaus. And for the life of me, I don't understand. Well, I kind of understand, but we'll be generous here. I don't understand credit repair people who get on videos and put on websites like, make your letters as short as possible. It's the dumbest thing ever. Make them as long as they need to be. If you need 100 pages of attachments, guess what you do? You do 100 pages of attachments. And people say, well, John, the person that's overseas reading this is not going to read through 100 pages. What do I care? If they choose to intentionally violate the law and their excuse is, we'll only read the first 3 pages, that sounds pretty willful to me. That sounds like punitive damages to me. So if the credit bureaus choose to willfully ignore the law, that's on them, not on me. I got a clear conscience suing them for that. Okay. Give them everything possible that you can, and then let them break the law, or maybe they do the right thing. Fabulous. Hey, congratulations, guys. You fixed it. You deleted it. Perfect. But when you don't fix it, you don't delete it, you deserve to be sued. All right. Let's see. 5 times, no recall. Let's see. Use consumer laws with deleting negatives items off a credit file. Yeah, I mean, it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA. Okay. And so that's what we use. You don't need to cite the law to them. Now, it doesn't. Well, I'll say this. It won't hurt you. It'll hurt you if you kind of get the law wrong. Okay. But there's no reason to cite the law. It's kind of like I have these discussions with people about Metro 2. And they're like, oh, you've got to understand Metro 2. And you have to understand this Oscar. And they completely don't get it. All right. The FCRA doesn't care anything about that. All right. And by the way, Oscar, it's just the communication. It could be carrier pigeon. It could be fax. It could be email. It's just called it's the electronic communication. Metro 2 is just the language that furnishers provide the data in to the bureaus. Okay. It has nothing magical about it. And so same thing with like knowing, well, this section of the law, you just tell them where they've messed up, ask them to fix it or delete it. And when they don't, you sue them. We don't have to cite any law to them. Okay. Again, it's all right if you cite the law, but get it right. If you get it wrong, you give them an argument. They start thinking, maybe we'll tell the judge we got confused because he was misciting the law. So I wouldn't put any law in it. Just, hey, I want my complete file. I want my biographical information corrected. Here's the correct version. Get rid of everything else. Here's an account. Here's what's wrong, what's missing. Fix it or delete it. Here's the second account. Here's what's wrong. Here's what's missing. Fix it or delete it. Again, give me my complete file. Give me the method of verification. If you won't fix or delete stuff, put this 100-word statement. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Okay. And then attach the proof. All right. So let's go back to the, your green thumb said, got a response in Spanish. Okay. That's the wildest thing. Okay. I guess what I would do is to give them the benefit of the doubt, even though they don't deserve it, call them and say, ask them, like, why did you send this to me in Spanish? And then I would also run the Spanish thing through a translator or get, somebody who speaks Spanish and see, did they fix everything? Did they delete it? Also pull your new reports. But look, if they sent you something in Spanish that doesn't fit with what you did, I mean, they've only got 30 days to investigate this stuff and either fix it or delete it. If they do another option, like send a weird letter in Spanish that doesn't fix or delete it, you can sue them. So I would definitely get with an attorney about that. Again, you may want to call the bureaus give them a chance, ask them why they did this, but I would definitely get with an attorney about that. All right, let's see. What happened if I asked them to the date last payment was on Equifax one day, TransUnion another day, Experian another day, just received verified accurate. Okay. So let's talk about this. So sometimes a bureau may put a specific date, like June 15, 2022. Another bureau may just put the month and the year, June 2022. And sometimes if they don't have the precise date, they just always put the first. This is my view. If all three of them say June or June 1st or June 15, 2022, I would not sue over that. Okay. Now, if you really start getting variation, and again, I'm not talking about some 3-in-1, credit monitoring, credit repair type deal. I'm talking about you go to annualcreditreport.com, get your Equifax, get your Experian, get your TransUnion, and one says June and one says December and one says February. Now that is something that should catch your attention. Okay. And I would definitely dispute that. You could also look at your own statements. Maybe you have credit card statements from Discover, Capital One, or whoever it is, and say, like, when did I make my last payment? Okay. And if you've got the proof of that, you could include that. All right. Guys, y'all got 3 different dates. And the truth of the matter, it was August of 22. Here's, a statement, or here's something from Capital One saying that it was actually August of 22. So just be careful that, like, I see people, what's the software program? Client Dispute Manager, okay, produces this beautiful report. I mean, I haven't seen one in 3 years, but I doubt it's changed. Produces a beautiful report. It's got all your stuff and like highlights in red or pink or something, the stuff that's contradictory. Well, that's great, okay, but it's only as good as the data fed into it. And if you're pulling it from like an Identity IQ, a Smart Credit, you have to make sure that data is solid, okay? And that this is not some formatting issue when it went from like, hey, we're buying all of our data from TransUnion, and TransUnion says they're getting Equifax and Experian, and now that's coming through. I mean, now we're getting into multiple layers here, okay? That's why it's best go to TransUnion, go to Experian, go to Equifax. You do that through annualcreditreport.com and then see what the differences are. You'll find differences, okay? You'll find February of 2023, Equifax will say you're current. Experian says you're 30 days late. TransUnion says 60. That's beautiful. Put all that in there. Like, guys, which one is it? Okay, Capital One. You got 3 bureaus reporting 3 different dates. What's the truth here? Now, when you say you didn't request to verify, I'll just say this. Sometimes, I'm not saying you are, but sometimes people get sort of hung up on this word. They say, no, I demanded deletion. I did not want verification. Well, you can sort of want whatever you want, okay? But the law says if you point out an error, they have to investigate. The bureau does. As long as they notify the furnisher in time, the furnisher has to investigate. And if it is inaccurate, they have to make it accurate or delete it. If it's incomplete, they have to make it complete or delete it. But if it's accurate and complete, then they just tell you, hey, we verified that this thing is accurate and complete. So there's nothing wrong with them saying verified. And like we can't say in our letter, like, I don't want you to verify this. No, we say, I want you to investigate it, make it accurate, make it complete, or delete it. Okay. And if they are verifying something that's inaccurate, incomplete, then you talk to a lawyer about suing. All right, let's see here. Thought of something, but can you sue a CRA if they're not reporting the report statuses correctly or the incorrect principal value? Yeah, so the simple matter is, tell you what, let me pull this up on screen. Let's get this here. All right, so let's look at 1681I. So this is the law. Again, I'll try to make this bigger, so hopefully it is easy to see here. All right, so let's hopefully this will pop up here. If the completeness or accuracy of any item of information contained in a consumer file at a consumer reporting agency is disputed by the consumer, okay? And then we won't worry about the rest of it. So let's see if we can layer on top what they're reporting the status incorrectly. In other words, what they're reporting is not correct. Or if they're reporting the incorrect principal balance, well, then we come back to this. If the completeness or accuracy of any item of information contained in the file is disputed. So the answer is yes. They got the wrong balance on there? Absolutely. I mean, we've seen situations where it may be, I paid this off 6 months ago and they're still reporting a balance. That's wrong. You dispute that. Okay. They're reporting that it's 60 days late when actually it's current. Now you have to be careful. Okay. Again, that's why I say, like, go get your real reports from annualcreditreport.com, because it might be accurate to say previously 60 days late, now current. It may be what you're looking at, Credit Karma or something like that, just says 60 days late. Well, you got to know what the bureau is actually saying. Okay. So if it says was 60 days late and you were 60 days late, now current, and you now are current, well, then that's accurate. Okay. But if the status says 60 days late and actually you're current, then that would be wrong. So you got anything you find on there that is inaccurate or incomplete, I would look at delete or at disputing it with this caveat. Understand that they always have the option. The credit bureau does, and the furnisher. They always have the option to delete. And this is something a lot of people don't think about. They'll say, well, I want to dispute that 27-year-old credit card account as a 30-day late 6 years ago. And I'm like, they could just delete the whole account. No. I'm telling them, only delete that 30-day. You can tell them whatever you want. They have the right under the law as they investigate an account to go, it's accurate, or I'll fix it, or I'll delete it. It's complete, or I'll make it complete, or I'll delete it. They can always delete it. Okay. So my viewpoint on this and what we do in my firm is we would only recommend somebody disputing something if they would be happy that it's deleted. That's why the last series I did, I think I called it something like, fix, delete, or sue. Either they fix it, great. They delete it, great. Or we sue them, great. All right. So hopefully that helps you there. Let's come back to Tommy here. Disputed numerous times, filed CFPB complaints, spelled out in detail every contradiction, still having totality hundreds of discrepancies. Called them, told to call the creditor. Yeah. So, Tommy, why don't you do this? Reach out to me at alabamaconsumer.com. Just mention you were on here, give me your name, your YouTube name here, and just say, hey, here's where I live, and give me just sort of like a little timeline. I sent these disputes this year or last year, whenever it was, and I'll see if I can help you find somebody. I'm assuming you don't live in Alabama. If you live in Tennessee, I've got a lawyer in my firm, great guy, Blaine Dixon. He's in Tennessee. If you're in Georgia, I work very closely with a lawyer in Georgia. If you're in California, I've got a guy out there. I mean, so there are some people that I could connect you with. And if you're not in one of those states, sometimes we can take somebody in another state, and like if we're suing Equifax, just sue in Georgia. It's where Equifax is. Or sue Experian out in California, or TransUnion in Chicago or Philadelphia. So anyway, there are some options. Just reach out to me, alabamaconsumer.com. All right. Let's see. Dustin says, any tips for a client facing a second bank account garnishment? I know it's a second, third debt buyer, no notice from first garnishment in Florida. So Dustin, what I would say is, first of all, got to get with a lawyer in Florida. So let me pull up a couple options for you, because what I would say is if your question was in Alabama, I'd say, well, first of all, you can't be garnished in Alabama if we're excluding like federal student loans. Can't be garnished unless there's a judgment. Cannot be a judgment unless you were properly served. Okay. So if you sort of imagine building this thing, they have to file the lawsuit first. Then they have to get you served. Then they have to give a judgment. Then they can garnish. Well, if the being served part, if we can pull that away, the whole thing collapses down to the lowest level, which is there's still a lawsuit against you. Now they got to get you properly served. Okay. So that would be my first question is, were you properly served? And as far as no notice from the first garnishment, not exactly sure what you mean by that. So what I would say to do is, let's see, Ricardo Law, Mike. Okay. So, and these guys have a very good YouTube channel as well. So Ricardo and Waslick. So this is Jason and Mike. These guys, they know what they're doing with sort of debt collection defense. I also do a lot of foreclosure defense in Florida. But you can reach out to them. Let's see, Aaron Swift in Clearwater is a good guy, and his firm would know about this as well. So there's Aaron Swift. I don't know the other guys as well. I know Aaron very well. So you can get with them, and they may practice statewide on this, or if you're in Miami, they may say, oh, here's the guy to call in Miami. Okay, so that's what I would do there. And let's see, when's a good time to go to CFPB after how many times? I mean, some people go CFPB sort of simultaneously. I would not just go to the CFPB, but if you send a dispute to the credit bureau and you send one to the CFPB, that can be good. Okay. Some people wait, say, well, I want to do 2 disputes to the credit bureaus and then I'll go to the CFPB. That's fine as well. So I would just, I never go to CFPB. Okay. But that's also our model is we're going to dispute and it gets fixed, they delete it or we sue. Okay. So we're not really asking the CFPB for help. If we need help, we go to court and get the judges to help us. So I would just say, treat the CFPB like a bonus. Okay. Good guys there. They do a great job. But I would never go to CFPB without going to the credit bureaus. Now, if you want to go simultaneously, do this dispute, that dispute, another dispute, that's a great way to do it. But just understand any help you get from the CFPB, that is a added bonus. Their focus is really on sort of big institutional problems. Now, they'll pass along your complaint, but they're not going to necessarily get involved in your individual complaint to help out. Okay. Let's see. Can you sue if the credit reporting agency does not investigate, send you a stall letter? Yeah. So stay focused 254. We talked about that a little bit earlier, that if you get one of those stall letters, my recommendation is if you're working with an attorney, ask the attorney, hey, can we just sue on this? Now, the downside of that is you may not be able to sue the furnishers. Okay. So we'll come back to that in a second. So maybe you just sue or pick up the phone and call. Okay. And what I like people to do is call and say, hey, I got this weird letter from you. What's the deal? Because I sent you a letter. I see here it was delivered on April the 7th. And then April the 10th, you sent me this letter saying you didn't think it was from me. Just to clarify, that was from me. So you guys can go ahead and investigate it. And you're going to investigate it, right? And usually they say, oh, well, I'm not authorized to do that. And we can't find your letter. What do you mean you can't find my letter? I know you got it. And obviously you got something because you sent me this stall letter. So pull up my letter. I'll wait for you. Oh, well, I'm not allowed to access that part of it. Wait a minute. You guys got my dispute letter. You sent me this bogus letter, gave me a phone number. I'm calling. And now you say you can't find my letter? Oh, no, sir, we can't find it. Could you resend it? Well, what do I need to put in there so that you guys won't reject it? We had one bureau say this. It looked too professional. You should make it sloppy and misspell words, and then we won't think that you had help doing it. Well, first of all, it doesn't matter if you have help drafting a letter, okay? You think the CEO of Equifax personally types up every letter that goes out? You think President Biden or President Trump before him hand wrote every letter? No, people bring letters to him and go, Mr. President, here's a letter. He reads over, he goes, yep, send it out, send it out. You can do the same thing. Okay. Now you got to make sure you have read and approved the letter if you're having somebody else like physically mail it for you. But you just say, well, first of all, that was my letter. I approved it. I want you to investigate it. And then do the trick we talked about earlier, which is I will now begin to read my 14-page letter. Are your fingers ready to type? Let us begin. And usually they will suddenly, amazingly, find your letter. Like, no, don't read it to me. I can't. You'll like completely mess up my call average if I have to sit here and type 14 pages. Like, I found your letter. We're going to investigate it. I thought so. But anyway, that's my suggestion. But yes, you can sue them. Oh, here's what I was going to say. So you send a letter to the credit bureau. The credit bureau sends your letter to the furnisher. That's the only way the furnisher has any liability. If you send just directly to the furnisher without a credit bureau, you can't sue under the FCRA. So your letter goes to the credit bureau, and then the credit bureau sends it to the furnisher. Now the furnisher has an obligation. If they blow that obligation, you can sue the furnisher and the credit bureau. But if you just get that stall letter and you sue the credit bureau, now you can't go after the furnisher, at least because of that credit bureau. Okay. So sometimes you have to balance this out. Like, do I want to just do a quick strike against the bureau and say to the bureau, you got to pay me more money because you messed this up and you did not notify the furnishers? So you deprived me of my money I could get from Capital One and Chase Bank and Midland Funding and Portfolio Recovery. Somebody's got to pay the money. All right. Or do you force the credit bureau by disputing again, preferably over the phone, and make them send your dispute to the furnishers? So then you can sue everybody when they mess it up. All right. Do you have any case law for a reverse E8 claim? Yeah. So let's talk about what that is. Sometimes this is called the undispute method, but I do kind of like what I've heard. I think Brian Ponder call it that, and Matt Leistra of Credit Con. So let's first of all talk about what this is. So 1692E, this is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So if we look up here, actually we'll sort of back up. This gives you, the whole list here. So we want to look at the Debt Collection Practices Act, okay? And then we want to look at Section E. So this is when a debt collector, so it has nothing to do with an original creditor. Now, you may have a state law that applies, but the FDCPA does not apply to original creditor, only debt collectors. So Section E is when they lie. They do something false, misleading, deceptive. And this is the general law right here. Okay, it's not very long. A debt collector may not use any false, deceptive, or misleading representation or means in connection with the collection of any debt. All right, so that's the law here. Let's see if I can turn this on. All right. Now, without limiting the general application of this stuff that's highlighted, the following conduct is a violation. So all that's saying is, in general, you better not use any false, deceptive, or misleading representation or means in connection with collection of a debt. And to give you some examples, here are examples. All right. If we go down to E8, we have this general statement. So remember, we've got the overall general statement. Don't lie when you're collecting a debt. Now, here's an example. Communicating or threatening to communicate to any person credit information which is known or should be known to be false. Okay. So if a debt collector is credit reporting on you and they know it's false, or they should know it's false. Now, that could be like the whole account. It could be the balance, the payment history. Like, it's pretty broad, right? Then that violates the FDCPA. And then they give us another example. So if you're sort of following this, you got the general rule. Here's an example. Now here's another example of this example, which is an example up here. Okay. So here's the critical part. And usually when we talk about an E8 case, this is what most people refer to. And just give you an idea, I mean, we probably file, I don't know, 30 of these a month, something like that. So including the failure to communicate that a disputed debt is disputed. Okay, so if I tell a debt collector, I dispute this debt, and they can go crazy and go, well, you have to tell me why. You can't just give me a naked dispute. And you're like, blah, 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 blah. It means nothing. Okay. All they have to know is the debt's disputed. They don't even have to know it from me. Okay. The creditor could tell them, hey, by the way, John Watts disputes this debt. Now that debt collector knows or should know, and they better mark it. They could get something that's absurd, like this debt. Imagine they get information that says, here's an AT&T bill, and it's for Bobby Smith, and the account was opened in 2000, and Bobby Smith was born in 2002. Well, you know what? They should probably figure out, if it's an individual account, that ain't right. Okay, that something's not right about this. So then they would have to mark it as disputed. So what Life on Support is saying is, what about a reverse E8? Well, reverse E8 is when, let's take Midland, they're reporting it as disputed, and then you notify Midland, you say, by the way, I no longer dispute that. Please remove the dispute notification. And then they don't remove it. They update it again after that, but they don't remove it. So that's what a reverse E8 is. And yes, there is some case law. I think actually on my YouTube channel, there should be 2 videos, one from the 11th Circuit. It's an unpublished case. So the 11th Circuit is Alabama, Georgia, Florida, where they upheld a court throwing out a reverse E8. And then there's one from the Northern District of Alabama, Judge Anna Marie Axon, who, I want to say this maybe a year ago, she denied, is either a motion to dismiss or summary judgment on a reverse E8's an LVNV case, very detailed opinion. And as she is very prone to do when her opinion is very well reasoned. And so she lays out why this is a violation, at least as alleged, or the facts that are in the case at that point. If you can't find those videos, just message me and I'll send you the links to them. But that's some case law. I'll say this, that people have been sort of foolish about bringing these cases. The way they bring them, their proof, and it's kind of turned judges off on these. But I think it's a valid claim, and there are some very legitimate reasons. Like if you try to close on a mortgage or get pre-approval and you have a dispute notation on your credit report, generally you cannot get that. You've got to remove that dispute notation. And so if you tell, for example, Midland, and they don't remove it and they update the next month, leave it on there, yeah, it's an E8 violation. So if you guys are interested, I think there is some more case law that's come out in the last 6 months. I'll be glad to do videos on that. All right, so let's see here. We've got Jilly Bean. Hello, had a second hearing 3 to 4 weeks ago. Other side was denied motion for summary judgment. Now what? They filed this 16 months ago. How long do they have to pursue me? So I'm going to hallucinate. This is a debt buyer has sued you. Somebody like Midland, LVMV, Portfolio, Calvary, any number of these companies. And they sued you 16 months ago, and the MSJ was denied. So let's kind of define our terms here. So MSJ, I presume you mean a motion for summary judgment. So a motion for summary judgment, let's back up even one step further. A motion is just a request. That's where we're asking the judge to do something. Hey, postpone the trial, give me a trial date, throw this claim out, give me more time. You're just asking the judge to do something. We just happen to call that a motion. Normally it's done in writing unless you're in the middle of trial and the other side gets it. So a motion for summary judgment is saying, hey, judge, here are all the facts. There's no disputed fact. And there's no way a reasonable person could look at these facts and come to any conclusion except what I want, which is for you to enter judgment against this consumer. Okay. And if the judge denies that, it means you go on with the case. Maybe there's more discovery, like depositions and answering questions. Maybe you go to a pretrial, and then ultimately you go to trial. Now, if you lose summary judgment, in other words, if they ask for summary judgment and it's granted, the case is typically over. Okay. But if they ask for summary judgment and it's denied, then the case continues on. So here's your starting point. Here's trial. Somewhere along the way, they go, judge, enter summary judgment. Okay. It's just like a default judgment, a consent judgment, a judgment after a trial. A judgment's a judgment is a judgment. Summary judgment just means the judge is summarily entering judgment. Okay. But if here they are at summary judgment, here's trial, and this gets denied, it just keeps rocking along to trial. So, in your last question was, they filed this 16 months ago. How long do they have to pursue me? I don't know what state you're in. I can tell you every state I know of. The only thing that matters is, did they file the lawsuit in time? Okay. We look at when the statute of limitations expires and when they filed it. It doesn't matter if it takes 16 months, 16 years, 16 decades to get to trial. Okay. It doesn't matter. Now, judges don't want cases hanging around for a long time. So your judge may say, hey, we need to get this thing tried. But at least where I practice, there's no sort of outer limit. I mean, there are some, these tend to be class action cases, but there are some cases that are still ongoing from like the 70s. Think about that, 40 years. Okay. Very, very, very unusual. But just the passage of time by itself, to my knowledge, would not be of any help, at least where I practice. All right, let's see here. And I'm running a little tight on time, so I'm going to try to go through these just quickly as I can. If I miss anything, you're welcome to leave a comment. I'm going to get back going through comments, and we'll try to do these YouTube lives if this is of value to you guys. Okay, so Oklahoma, what's the difference between a home improvement loan and a home mortgage loan? So I'll tell you this, Oklahoma, that's not my area of, where I practice a lot. I mean, in general, a home mortgage loan is a loan that is connected to the property. So here's the way to think about it. Let's take just a normal loan first. You've got the debt up here. Okay, actually, let me do it this way. You have the debt up here. That's the note. Okay, we talk about, I make my mortgage payment. You don't really make your mortgage, you make your note payment. Okay, and then you have the property down here. Well, this would be an unsecured loan if it wasn't tied to the property. So what ties it to the property? That's the mortgage. So the mortgage ties the debt to the dirt. Okay. Now, a home improvement loan may be something where you go to your bank where you have your mortgage loan and you say, hey, give me a second loan or an equity line to do some improvement. Or it may be a roofing company, a contractor comes by and says, hey, we'll do this work. I know you don't have the money. We'll help you get a loan. So, I mean, there's all different varieties, kind of depends on what state you're in, but generally, your normal loan, what we would call our first mortgage is here. And then anything after that would be like a second mortgage, a home equity, home improvement. This guy is first in line. So if you default and there's a foreclosure, these guys get paid first. And then, like a tax lien or judgment lien, a second mortgage, home improvement loan. So not every home improvement loan is tied to the property, okay, but they generally are. So you just want to know the details of that. All right, so this is back on the different data. So you pull from annual credit report. Okay, that's perfect. I mean, I would, again, talk to a lawyer, find out why that's not enough. And if you run into a brick wall, just reach out to me, alabamaconsumer.com. Let me know which state you're in and that type of stuff. All right. Do you know what lenders that pull from Clarity? Okay. So let's pull that back up on the screen. So let's just do real quick on Clarity here. So Clarity, and then I'll come back to your question. So if you go to clarityservices.com, I don't know, I may not be able to make that much bigger, but you can see it's part of Experian. So you got Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. They all have their subprime credit bureau. So TransUnion is Factor Trust, Equifax is DataX. Okay. So if we go to factortrust.com, so you can see this is a TransUnion. We've got DataX, I think is the, nope, that's not it. No idea what that is. DataX from Equifax. Okay. Yeah, this is not like the public place where you find it, but um, anyway, that so all of these things have all these bureaus have these subprime. These are more like payday lenders, tribal lenders, online lenders. Okay, and truthfully, they're marketing. That's what they are, really marketing reports. So if we look at Clarity down here, hopefully this is so you guys can read it. Specializes in alternative services data, suite of FCRA regulated, means FCRA applies. Give reports and scores, give lenders visibility and critical subprime consumer information. So that's when you're getting like a higher interest rate, 20% on your car, that type of thing, including thin file. Thin file just means you don't have much reporting history. Maybe you've got no credit cards or one credit card and no file. I mean, it's like literally Equifax doesn't have anything on you. So what you do is, let me see here. I think I may have made the screen too big here. Okay. So you go to Clarity Report, and this is actually pretty easy to get. The other two, generally you have to mail in something, but you access your credit report right here, and you can get a free score. And so it will look much, much different than a normal credit report. Okay. It'll have accounts. They're all on one page for clarity. But instead of saying like, are you 30 days late or 60 days late? They'll say, are you 1 day late? Are you 5 days late? I mean, it's that granular on the lates. Lots of contradictory, incomplete information that you'll find there. But then it will have all the inquiries, and you'll realize there's like unbelievable number of companies pulling your credit report, and it will be, something sort of tribal sounding, like, I don't know, I'm just making this up, Eagle Lending or it'll be stuff like, so to answer the question here that was raised, who pulls from it? You'll find like One Main, Opportunity, I forget their full name, but Opportunity, I guess it's lending or funding or something like that. They also will report on your normal credit reports. Again, just like Speedy Cash, Easy Money, all those kind of like online payday lenders, tribal lenders. That's where you're getting it from. You'll find interesting things where, like, within the span of say 45 seconds, you'll have 5 different lenders pulling your credit report. Maybe you agreed to that. Maybe they have a permissible purpose because you plugged your information into like an aggregator that shot it out. But we definitely see a lot of impermissible pulls here. And if there's interest, we'll do a whole show on exactly what impermissible pulls are, because there's an incredible amount of confusion out there. And so those are the types of companies that pull from it. So in my mind, these are really marketing reports, and companies are pulling it because they'll have like your paychecks, your bank account information, your email address. I mean, next time you get paid, all sorts of data. We find about 10% of these, so 1 out of 10, is a mixed file. So it'll have Bob Smith, who's 33 years old, who lives in Birmingham, Alabama, and then it will have Elizabeth Johnson, an 87-year-old woman living in Spokane, Washington, right? And you go, how in the world did y'all mix these up? Because it'll have like her bank account and his email, and half the inquiries are his and half are hers, because Clarity doesn't care about that. Okay. They're not like matching it to make sure it's accurate data. They're just selling this stuff to payday lenders, tribal lenders, et cetera. So I recommend go pull your credit reports. If you find that you have a mixed or merged, please reach out to me through alabamaconsumer.com, because we're gathering those up and we're bringing these cases, and we want to have all sorts of proof that this is not just like a one-off thing. This is widespread problem. Again, in my experience, and I've looked at probably 300 Clarity credit reports, that's about 10%, maybe 5%, 10% have those errors. Okay, so let's see. We need you to recruit, train fresh graduated lawyer from Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York. Yeah, so I will say this. There are more lawyers that I know of in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania just go to NACA, that website that we had, and just go to this part, and you can plug in and hopefully find some good people there. But appreciate the kind words there. All right, let's see, Houston, Texas. So same thing, just go to this NACA website. It's consumeradvocates.org, and then find an attorney. And I'm sorry, have my little highlighter on the wrong screen there. This is always up here. If you go to the main page, we can do that. It's going to be right there. It's got consumers, and again, find an attorney. So hopefully that will help you there. Okay, same thing here. All right, let's see. Arnie says, I've seen the investigation results say one thing. When you pull the report, it doesn't reflect the updates. Yeah, exactly. So I'll tell you what my rule is, Arnie, on this is, so we do the dispute. Maybe we get results of investigation. Maybe we don't. But regardless if we do, unless it says deleted, okay, anything other than deleted, we're going to study very carefully what they do report. Now, if it says deleted, we're still going to pull a new report and make sure it actually is deleted. Okay. But usually if they say deleted, it is deleted. But so you do your dispute, you get the results of investigation, and then you pull the report. And really, this is a little trick, just to let you know, kind of pull the curtain back on what we do as a firm that has for 20 years been filing these types of lawsuits. You have your dispute letter, and if you've marked up your credit report, and then you pull the same credit report, so you get, from annualcreditreport.com, it makes it super easy to look at and tell, did they fix everything that's highlighted, that's circled, that's, a box around it over here? Did they fix it or correct it over here? If not, you sue them. Okay. So that is very easy, because you're right. What they say in those results of investigation does not always match what's in the report. And just give you like a little tip, TransUnion, the results of investigation, they've stripped out all the trended data or historical data. By that, I mean, so instead of just saying, here's your status, here's your balance, and then have a grid for, 30 days, 60 days, instead for each month, they have, here's your balance, your scheduled payment, the actual payment, were you late? Here's the next month, your balance, your scheduled payment, your actual payment, were you late? When you get the results of investigation, they strip all that out. Sometimes they do it on the full report as well, which actually just makes the report more incomplete. Okay. So they've made it worse, not better. But sometimes they will have the historical or trended data on the real report. So use the results of investigation just to kind of lock them into place. Like, okay, as of this date, they say they finished my investigation. Now let me go get a new report, and I'm going to compare all this and see what happens. All right. Carlos says lawyers are limited work out of their state. Collection company, no limits. Should be national code. Yeah. So I'll say this. The trend is very slow trend, but recognizing that's kind of silly that, you can practice law in Arkansas, but not Texas. Okay. So there's ways around this. Like, let's say somebody's in Arkansas, but there's a client in Texas. Well, they get a Texas lawyer to help them. Okay. Or maybe the lawsuit can be filed in Arkansas, or you can get licensed in another state. So there are different ways around it. But 20 years from now, I think we won't really have these state line divisions with law, but not anytime real soon. Let's see, filed the CFPB complaint, collection agency removed their trade line 15. Yeah, I will say this, the debt collectors are more concerned about the CFPB than the credit bureaus and even credit card companies, because they know that they're doing some bad stuff and they're sort of an easy target. Let's see, I sent 5 letters, one to each CRA, one to the collector, one to CFPB. Yeah, that's good. And there's nothing wrong with sending directly to the furnisher, okay? But I just want people to understand, under the FCRA, here's a credit bureau, here's furnisher. If you send to the credit bureau and they notify the furnisher, now you can sue the furnisher if they mess it up. But if here's credit bureau, but you just send to the furnisher, now they have an obligation to do the right thing, to do an investigation, but you can't sue them under the FCRA if they blow it. Is it okay to dispute a 2015 bankruptcy, get it removed, or just let it drop off? Yeah, you kind of do either one. I would only dispute stuff that has errors in it. Maybe it has the case number wrong, the date filed wrong, the date discharged or dismissed wrong. But, honestly, it's not really hurting you at this point. I mean, talk to whoever's doing your scoring or applying for a loan. But something from 2015 is so far in the past. Okay. All the accounts associated with that bankruptcy should be long off your credit report. And so look for an error. Is there something missing, something inaccurate? And give that a shot. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time with it. Let's see. Oh, this was the garnishment synchrony to Track America. I guess that's a law firm. North Carolina, 3 years. So, okay, if I'm remembering right, Jilly, I thought that it was somebody that you were in Florida. Maybe the judgment's in North Carolina. Now you live in Florida. I'm not sure. But if you live in North Carolina, definitely get with a lawyer in North Carolina. If you live now in another state like Florida, and there's some question about where you serve, then I would get with a North Carolina lawyer because they're going to know the law. How do you have to be served? And they can attack that in the court case. All right, let's see. Statute of limitations, 4 years for debt collectors to sue. Does this time start when the last payment was made or when the credit card charged off the debt? So this is log home here. So it's a good question. It does depend some by state. Normally, it's going to be there's kind of two ways to do it. One is going to be certainly a charge off, okay? Like that, usually is a line in the sand. So you definitely could start counting then. Technically, you could probably, depending on your state, start counting the last time that a payment was due and was missed, okay? Now, a little bit more advanced way of thinking about this is sort of every missed payment may be sort of a trigger of the statute of limitation for that particular missed payment. This is more so in an installment loan context. But the way most people, just as a shorthand, do this is they say, all right, when's the last time you paid? And then the next month you missed your payment, boom, that's going to start statute of limitation. Now, if 2 years later you sent them $10, depending on your state, that may restart the clock. Okay. So it sometimes is more complicated than it seems like it should be. But that also depends on, are they suing you under breach of contract, open account, account stated? Some states call it stated account, unjust enrichment, money had and received, all different forms of ways they can sue you. So you do have to look at those. But as a general rule, I would say it's when you last made a payment and then the next month you missed a payment, that's when it likely starts. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so Jilly, I live in North Carolina. Yeah, so definitely get with a lawyer in North Carolina. Remember, go back to that NACA website. Let's see here. Oh, not your show. Yeah, I understand. So, yeah, look, when you have a creditor and then Track America, okay, so maybe this is worthwhile. Who's going to actually buy the account will be Synchrony, and then it'll supposedly be LVNB or Portfolio or whoever buying it. Okay. But a lot of times they then use a sort of a middle person called Track America to basically handle all the litigation. Okay. So here's sort of the thought process. If you're LVNB, let's say, Jilly, you and I own LVNB or Portfolio or whoever. Do we want to go to each state and find 2 or 3 different law firms and manage, 100 law firms, 150 law firms? Or do we want to, for a price, a company like Track America or some related company will come to us and say, hey, we'll handle all your litigation across all 50 states. We'll deal with all the different law firms. We'll make sure they're in compliance. You just have to deal with us. So that's why, a lot of times a lawyer will say to me, oh, I talked to my client, LVNV. I'm like, well, actually, you didn't talk to LVNV. You talked to Track America, okay? But they don't really like to talk about that. So again, it's the creditor supposedly to the debt buyer, and then the debt buyer hires a law firm, but really they've gone up to Track America, who then hires the law firm. Okay. So it's sort of a convoluted web, and it can be very annoying, very frustrating, and hope you come out okay on that. See, Chase Your Gift says, appreciate all the information. And going back to your original video 14 years ago, I didn't have gray hair 14 years ago. And I'm sure those are just absolutely awful to watch. Maybe if you are an insomniac, find some of those older videos, probably put you asleep like that. But hopefully there is some value in the videos, and appreciate your kind words there. Let's see, Gabriel says, thank you. Well, you're very kind. I live in Colorado. Same exact process. Yeah. So look, good luck with that. And, go ahead and look for a lawyer in Colorado, so that if things don't get corrected, maybe that lawyer can help you, and good luck with everything. Let's see, what happened if collector's not licensed and bonded in my state, in this case, Florida? That may be a problem. I would definitely get with an FDCPA lawyer, a lawyer who sues debt collectors, and maybe if they're suing you, a lawyer that defends you, because that may be a big problem for them to not be licensed or to not be bonded in your state. So that could be a violation. There is a case from maybe 10 years ago, the 11th Circuit. So 11th Circuit's a federal appellate court over Georgia, Alabama, Florida. And it is called like LeBlanc versus Unifund, or Unifund versus LeBlanc. If you just type in Unifund, do a search. Matter of fact, let's just do that super quick. See if we can find that. So it is 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, Unifund, FDCPA. I'm just going to see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, here it is. LeBlanc versus Unifund CCR Partners. If you'll read this, I think one of the issues was that none of the defendants were registered as consumer collection agencies. I don't know why I can't highlight it. Anyway, and that's probably too small to see. Anyway, I'll drop this link into the comments. Read that case, may give you some ideas, but definitely talk to a lawyer, because at least in Florida, I think it does matter. Some states, it does not matter. Let's see. Up to your bag, making our life miserable, trying to secure land for a business. Yeah, definitely reach out to me. And you're great. No, yeah. Somebody said one time, oh, you got gray hair, and the response was, better to turn gray than turn loose. So at least that's what I think. So yeah, Silver Fox. So, well, listen, guys, really enjoy this. Sorry, it's been like 4 months since I've done one of these. I'll try to do these more. Just let me know if these are helpful to you, and wish you guys the best on this Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I hope to see you guys soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.